hot. It's on. Do you want me to talk? What?
If you see me run up here, don't freak out.
hope everybody has signed in.
That's weird.
Do I need to stay away from that? Oh. Okay. Just stay over here. It's still really loud. Okay, so hopefully everybody has signed in. There are forms up here to sign in on. I made sign-in sheets for each department except for convention because, sorry, I forgot. All right, so this is our annual drug-free workplace training. Oh, good. Does that sound better? Do I need to just talk really soft? Okay. All right, so today the training is, if you were here for last year's training, it is the same, maybe a little bit different. I know, I'm sorry, but I'm going to throw in some things. I have a couple of quizzes, and if you can get the answers, I have candy that I'll be throwing at you. So, you know, there is some incentive. So participation is required if you want candy, or maybe you have to wait until the very end. And if you behaved in class, you can get some. Okay. All right, we will get started. Of course, now I can't get this to work. All right. Okay, so our objectives are the same. How many are new with the city for this year? Oh my gosh, Andy, really?
It's working now.
Oh,
Just use the side to side.
that's what I was, okay. Oh, okay, no one is new? There were a couple? Okay, these hooligans in the back were distracting me from you. I apologize. Okay, so a lot of us, or most of us, have been through this training before. For those who are new, it's pretty exciting. Try not to fall asleep, especially since it's just right after lunch. Our objectives, we just want you to know the drug-free workplace policy, the impact substance abuse has on the workplace, ways that people use alcohol and other drugs, understanding addiction, signs and symptoms, and family and coworker impact. Again, if you've had to deal with it, you know the impact, and hopefully none of us have, but unfortunately it's something that occurs. We're going to talk about our assistance that's available, so our EAP program, confidentiality, and then we're going to get into some specific drugs. So, at the end of this, you guys should all be knowledgeable of our workplace, drug-free workplace policy. And we're going to kind of skip through this. You should be able to recognize the link between poor performance and alcohol. And for our supervisors, we're going to have that in more depth tomorrow. Yay, right? Okay. We're going to talk about the progression of the disease and, again, the assistance that's available. Why do we have a drug-free workplace policy? Because we do not want employees using drugs or alcohol while they're working. Does that make sense? Okay. So it sends a very clear message that alcohol and drug use is not allowed in the workplace, and it encourages employees who maybe have a problem with drugs or alcohol to seek assistance. We want to protect the health and safety of all employees. So that means if someone is suffering from a drug or alcohol problem, we want to get them help, but we also want to make sure that their coworkers and the public is safe. We want to maintain the integrity and reputation of the city, and again, we want to comply with the Drug-Free Workplace Act of 1988 because, well, for many reasons, but one of which is we get some grant money, right? So yes, we want a drug-free workplace, but we also want to comply with this act so that we can get some grant money. This is our policy. This is everyone's responsibility to know it. If you don't, ignorance is not a defense. The city is concerned with the health and well-being of all employees. The city cannot and will not condone or tolerate behaviors on the part of employees that relate to substance use, such as the use of illegal drugs, misuse of alcohol, the sale, purchase, transfer, manufacture, or possession of any illegal drugs, arrival or return to work under the influence of any drugs, legal or illegal, or alcohol to the extent that job performance is impaired, and misuse, abuse, illegal obtainment, or distribution of prescription or over-the-counter medications. So this is covering all types of medications. It's not all types of drugs. Alcohol, illegal drugs, prescription drugs, over-the-counter drugs, it's all in there. The city will not tolerate a substance use violation. Every employee is required to read and understand this policy. Again, ignorance is not a defense. And so I'm just highlighting some of the important parts of this policy so that you know which ones you should be remembering. Really, you should know the entire policy, but we're not going to read it verbatim. Employees who come forward voluntarily to identify a substance problem will receive support and assistance from the city. That means we need you to come forward before there's a positive alcohol or drug test. If you do not come forward, but instead you test positive for a drug and then say, oh, by the way, I have a drug problem, the city does not have to give you a second chance. If you come forward and say, I have a problem, then the city wants to help you out. So that whole say nothing, they'll blame the dog, that's no good for this. Drug and alcohol testing is intended to detect problems, deter usage, and allow appropriate corrective action. Make sense? Okay, that's why the city does it. And the city retains the sole right to change the testing protocol at any time. Again, if they do, they're going to let us know. Breath and alcohol concentration. So yes, alcohol is a legal drug in this country, but if you come to work intoxicated or you have a test over 0.02, whether it be breath or blood, it is considered a positive test, and then you are going to be in some trouble. If you refuse, or if you fail or refuse to submit a specimen, whether that be, again, blood, breath, urine, whatever it may be that the city, well, usually the city is going to be requiring urine or breath, unless, of course, you're involved in an accident, in which case they may take blood at the hospital. But if you refuse, it will result in termination. Any questions on that? Okay. So the types of testing the city has are post-op or pre-employment. Everybody had that right? Okay. Reasonable suspicion. So if your supervisor thinks that you've been using, they can test. Post-accident. So anytime you're involved in an accident, you're going to be tested, regardless of if you were at fault of the accident or not. Post-injury, there's random testing. I think most of us have experienced that. And then follow-up testing and return to work from assessment for treatment. So if you test positive, they give you a second chance agreement. When you come back, you're going to be tested, and then you're going to be randomly tested for, actually I'll get into that, for 2 years after that. If an employee has been found to have a confirmed positive drug or alcohol test, they may be immediately placed on paid administrative leave and then subject to appropriate discipline or termination. The last chance agreement is not guaranteed. It is up to the sole discretion. It is the sole discretion of the safety service director. Okay, so don't make the assumption of, oh, if I test positive, the city's going to give me a second chance. I would not take that risk. Again, if you are granted a second chance agreement, the employee will be randomly tested for a 2-year period. A second positive result results in termination. All right, that is our policy. Any questions on our policy? So everyone is aware, so no one's ignorant to this policy, so we're good to go? All right, so let's get into some fun stuff. Why is it important to have a drug-free workplace? Well, employees are 2.2 times more likely to request early dismissal or time off. Do you think that would irritate your coworkers? Possibly. 2.5 times more likely to have absences of 8 days or more in a year. Again, kind of frustrating for everybody else because they're picking up the slack. 3 times more likely to be late to work. 3.6 times more likely to be involved in an accident. And 5 times more likely to file a workers' comp claim. So all in all, it's costing the city money. In fact, it's costing employers $81 billion annually. Okay. Do you think the taxpayers want to pay that? No. Okay. Alcoholism causes 500 million lost workdays each year. And when we get into this, we're going to cover a lot of different drugs, but we will focus more on alcohol because alcohol is the most abused drug in this country. Now, even with all the hype of the heroin epidemic or the opiate epidemic, alcohol is still the #1 drug abused. So that's where we will focus. Impact, employee health. Obviously, there's some serious health consequences to abusing drugs and alcohol. Productivity, if you come in with a hangover, do you think you're going to be as productive? Probably not. Poor decision making, because that's what drugs and alcohol cause, are very poor decision making. You're putting the safety of yourself, other employees, and the public at risk. It's going to affect employee morale, again, because if someone's coming in either high or drunk or hungover, their coworkers are picking up the slack. Is that a good working environment? Nobody wants to put up with that. Security, again, I don't need to beat a dead horse. You get it. And then really it's going to make the city look bad. Because if somebody shows up drunk or high to work and the media gets a hold of that, what's that going to do to our image? It's going to look terrible. So ways that people use. Okay, so we have this guy over here. He's our experimental user. He has no idea what he's doing. The little guy, the beagle-looking guy, whatever he is, he's just drinking a beer. He's probably got some friends in the booth. Okay, is he just a social recreational drinker? Is that okay? Yeah. Okay, this poor guy in the middle, though, like he had a terrible week at work, and he is just trying to relieve some stress. Is that a healthy way to relieve stress? No, but I really want to snag that little puppy up and snuggle with him or something because he's cute. All right. So that's how people are using. If you fall into the stress use, that's where it starts becoming an issue. Because if you're dealing with stress by using drugs or alcohol, then it's more likely to start turning into problem use. So abuse, it's when you're using a substance to modify or control mood or state of mind. Again, you're trying to deal with stress, so you start using. The potential consequences, accidents, whether that be car accidents or you're working around the house and decide that working on the roof is a good idea, something like that. These are the things that can happen at work. It could be you're using equipment. Public work guys, you guys could, I just think of the runs that we go on, but think about the things that you guys do day in and day out and then throw a little alcohol in the mix. Is that a good idea? No. You're like, maybe. No, not a good idea. Okay. You could have blackouts, legal problems, poor job performance, family problems, and then sexual behavior that increases your risk of HIV. So all in all, these are big issues. And this is just abuse. So then when we get into dependence or addiction, it's that irresistible compulsion to use, even though it's having very detrimental consequences in your life, work, family, friends, and yet you keep using regardless of those consequences. You try to get it under control and you fail. So, 1 in 10 people, abuse leads to addiction. Okay, so 10% of the population is suffering from addiction. It is chronic, meaning it continues. It's nothing quick. It's chronic. It's progressive, so if you don't get treatment, it will get worse. It is primary, and that's when we're talking about other mental health disorders. So you may be, if you suffer from alcoholism and maybe you're depressed because of your alcoholism, okay, yes, you might have 2 diagnosable conditions, but alcoholism would be first. Whereas if you were depressed and you were self-medicating for depression and using alcohol, then it wouldn't be primary. All very, I guess it's really not important to you all, but it's there. Terminal, so if you don't get help, it can kill you. And it's characterized by denial. So if someone tells you, I do not have a drinking problem, even though they can't show up for work on time because they have a hangover every morning, you're going to be like, yeah, you do. And they're going to say, no, I don't. And they're going to believe that they really don't have a problem. They're just going to tell themselves over and over, I don't have a problem. Risk of addiction. So, guys, sorry. This is where it gets bad for the men. Addiction is a family disease, so genetics, and Men are 3 times more likely to develop problems with alcohol than females, and they don't know if it's because men are more likely to be risk takers or if it's because of that genetic component and men are just more likely because you have something that just causes it to happen. I don't know. But men are more likely to suffer from it. Prior abuse of alcohol or other drugs is a factor. Early use, so the younger you start, the more likely you are to become addicted. Family or work struggles. So again, if you're using alcohol or drugs to relieve stress, it's more likely that it's going to develop into problem use. And then not having a purpose or satisfaction in your life. I feel like if you fall into that category, we do have employee assistance program. Maybe you should talk to somebody at TriHealth. Start feeling better. Abuse of alcohol and other drugs. It's going to affect you emotionally, behaviorally, and physically. Okay, so it's going to make you feel bad. You're probably going to start becoming depressed. Behaviorally, you may start acting out. You may not be showing up for work on time. Physically, it's going to take a toll on your body. Emotional effects. So this is what you may see from a coworker. Aggression. Maybe they could just get burnt out with work. They could be experiencing anxiety. It also depends on the type of drug they're using. Depression, paranoia, and denial. Why do you think paranoia would be an issue? Exactly. Okay. He wants candy? Okay. He's addicted. Well, see, I can't walk around or else I'm going to make the mic go crazy, so someone's going to have to pass it back. You can't throw it that far. Yeah. All right. Behavioral and physical effects of substance use. Slowed reaction time. We see this especially with alcohol or other depressants. Impaired coordination. Okay. In fact, I should have brought the fatal vision goggles, the drunk goggles. Has everybody seen those before? No? Oh, next year I will bring them. And then so they are goggles that simulate the effects that alcohol has on your balance and coordination. And a lot of people don't realize just how the loss of control they have over their body movements when they're impaired because, well, they're impaired. So they're not processing information the same as an unimpaired person would. So these goggles just give you the idea, simulate that effect so that you can see just why people should not be working, driving, those types, working on the roof when they're under the influence of alcohol. So impaired coordination, slurred speech or slurred speech, irritability, excessive talking, kind of like me. I am not impaired right now. Inability to sit still, limited attention span, again, weight loss, sweating, chills, smell of alcohol. That's kind of a dead giveaway. But again, all these effects, you may see them. It really depends on the type of drug they're using, but it's something, it should be an indicator if you see these. So our specific drugs, here's our list. We will cover some of them. Not here. Okay. So our depressants, alcohol is a depressant. Slowed heart and brain function and metabolism. It induces sleep. It relaxes muscles, numbs nerves, and it takes the edge off, which is why a lot of people like to use alcohol to self-medicate for stress. Here are our drinks. Which one has the most alcohol? Okay. You all get candy. Everyone will get a piece when you leave. All right, so now here's the test. Highest alcohol content, they all have the same. So, let's see here. This is going to be tough. I'm going to have to decide who wins. It's going to, well, it's just going to have to, I'm going to be the judge. Okay, so there is a 25.3 ounce bottle of wine with 12% alcohol. How many drinks does it have? 5. There we go. All right. A 22-ounce bottle of 5% alcohol beer. Who said 2 first? Oh, bad throw. 40 ounce of malt liquor, 7% alcohol. 40-ounce malt alcohol with 7% alcohol. Come on, guys. Is it going to hurt to guess?
4.
Who said 5? Okay. I know. Oh, bad throw. The 12-ounce beer, 5% alcohol.
1.
There we go. Oh, there were a lot. Who all yelled 1? There were. Oh. Anybody else yell 1? No. You're just looking out for your. Okay. A 3.5 ounce of port or sherry.
1.
Who said 1? You said it again? Wow, you're just raking on all the candy. All right. And 3 ounces of liquor. Oh, you did it again. You want? Oh, then I'm like, I can't throw. I'm like, gonna hit. I need to take a step back so I can get a full swing. All right.
Get you a slingshot.
That'd be fantastic. Okay. So, our general guidelines, based on weight, health, and age, hang on. Once your blood alcohol level has peaked, assuming you stop drinking, it will only fall about 0.015% per hour. That is not very much. Each drink will take about 1 hour to leave your body. Again, we just went over the number of drinks. So if you have a Long Island iced tea, how many drinks did you just consume?
3.
I think it's 5. Aren't there 5 types of alcohol in there? It's at least 4 or 5. Either way, it's a lot. So you just consumed 4 or 5 drinks. All right. All right, our drunk monkeys. Before we do drunk monkeys, I'm gonna try to keep you guys awake a little bit longer. All right. The U.S. has the strictest youth drinking laws of all Western countries with the highest minimum drinking age in the entire world. True or false? Ooh, Colleen was the first one to. All right. So yeah, true or false. So first one to yell out the right answer. Get candy. In the U.S., people of higher socioeconomic status are more likely to abstain from drinking alcohol. Ooh, everybody's going to have to get one at the end. All right. Drinking alcohol raises body temperature. Did you say? My goodness. Okay, so. Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah. All right. So on that one, drinking actually lowers it, even though it dilates, and it just makes you feel hotter, but you're not actually. I don't know. Okay. That goes through a lot of different things now that I say it that way. Okay. High tolerance is proof that a person does not have a drinking problem. Okay, so yeah, everybody's going to have to get candy on their way out. And your brain may take as long as 48 hours to return to normal after a big night of drinking. Okay, so especially binge drinking. All right, so now you guys are kind of awake. We're going to watch some monkeys. Oh, or not. All right. I'll hand out some candy while you're watching.
This is the sleepy island of St. Kitts in the Caribbean. "300 years ago, velvet monkeys were brought here from West Africa along with slaves serving the rum industry. Escaped monkeys acquired a taste for alcohol by eating fermented sugarcane left in the fields. Today they satisfy their thirst by raiding local bars. They have learned to be sneaky. Picking the right moment is everything. For years, the monkeys have been studied for insights into our own drinking habits. Just as we vary in our taste for alcohol, so do the monkeys. Some do anything for an alcoholic cocktail. But just as some people are teetotal, so are some monkeys. These reject alcohol in favor of soft drink. Significantly, the percentage of teetotal monkeys matches the non-drinkers in the human population. In line with human habits, most drink in moderation. 12% are steady drinkers, and 5% drink to the last drop. The similarity between us shows that a liking for alcohol is determined mainly by our genes. After each daily raid, other human parallels soon appear. But unlike us, monkeys that are heavy drinkers make better leaders, respected by other monkeys. They seem to tolerate leaders that monkey around. Like monkeys, our taste for alcohol began when we scoured the forest for ripe fermenting fruit. Food and alcohol became linked with intoxicating effect.
All right. Okay, so, any lights? Our drunk monkeys, same as last year, but they're funny to watch. Okay, so we're going to talk about stimulants now. So this would be cocaine, amphetamines, things like that. They increase the heart rate, suppress appetite, you feel energized, suppress sleep, false sense of alertness, and you suffer or can suffer from cardiac arrest. This is why people will use stimulants, because maybe they're tired, maybe they're working a couple jobs, and they're trying to stay awake, and they think that by using stimulants they are doing a good job, but it is a false sense of alertness. Just like when we consume, caffeine is a stimulant, so when we consume a whole bunch of coffee and we think like we're good to go, not so much. All right. Amphetamines, our tolerance develops rapidly, leading to addiction quicker than some other drugs. Withdrawal symptoms include craving, exhaustion, depression, mental confusion, insomnia, extreme hunger, psychosis, intense anxiety. And think about it, if someone's been awake for 24, 48 hours or even longer, do you think there's going to be some psychosis when they come off of that? Yeah, because they're going to be completely exhausted. Their body is going to just absolutely hate them. Health problems, you have heart attacks, hypertension, liver damage, all sorts of fun things. So how do people use, and cocaine would be one, snorting, and really with any drugs you can change up how you use it. You can snort it, you can smoke it, you can inject it, you can chew it. It doesn't really matter. If someone comes to work high on cocaine, do you care how they used it? No. You just know that your coworker is under the influence and you don't like it. Symptoms, signs and symptoms, weight loss, agitation, irritability, insomnia, high blood pressure, irregular heartbeat, restlessness, impulsive behavior. Can these also be signs of other things? Yes. So when we go through these different signs and symptoms of different drugs, don't assume that because you see something like, oh my gosh, my coworker has just lost a ton of weight and they've been really irritable lately, like they must be on drugs. Or maybe there's a lot of stress going on at home. Okay, so just don't make the assumption. Did we just skip one? Oh, okay. It is our second largest cash crop in the U.S., and it is the #1 positive drug test in the workforce. What is it? Marijuana. Okay. It is the most commonly used illicit drugs, and daily or near daily use has increased from 5.1 million in 2007 to 7.6. I don't even know what it's at right now, but I guarantee it's higher than 7.6 million. And in Ohio, we now have medical marijuana. Does that mean you can use it if you're a city employee? Nope. Okay. It stays in your system. It is not water soluble, so it stays in your fat cells, and therefore you can test positive for 4 to 6 weeks after use, maybe even longer. Okay, so this is the medical marijuana law, but as a city employee, you cannot use marijuana even if a doctor prescribes it because the city's policy says no. All right?
Where's it going for the THC? Now some of these medical places, I guess, are taking the THC out and are getting less personal usually.
So
Custom tests or stuff.
the CBD, is that what you're talking about? So if they if they take the THC out, then it's just CBD, and so it's usually, I can't remember what that stands for, but it's CBD oil, and you can use that. But if they're taking the THC out, it doesn't have any of the, well, it's not going to have any sort of effect that would make you think you're high. So it's not going to, you're not going to feel intoxicated. And you're not going to test positive for THC because there's no THC in it. But the CBD oil, it's expensive. Yeah. Yeah. So they say it can treat anxiety, and it's actually what's in marijuana that helps people with anxiety and things like that. But in Ohio, it's still really expensive, but it is legal. So, any questions on that? Okay. All right, symptoms and signs of marijuana use. Dilated pupils, bloodshot eyes, sleepy appearance, reduced motivation, difficulty thinking. I go through these and I get a little concerned because I'm like, ooh. Like, wow, my coworkers, I don't know what they're thinking right now. So I'm like, I need more coffee. I'm so tired. Can also cause euphoria, feeling sluggish, redness, puffy eyes, impaired judgment, impaired short-term memory, inappropriate laughter, increased heart rate. There's all sorts of things that go along with this. So is it necessarily going to be easy to figure out if your coworker's using? No, but you know, if it continues over time, then you may be able to figure it out, especially if they come in smelling of marijuana. I feel like that would be a giveaway. Yes?
How about those energy drinks, like 5-hour energy and stuff like that? There's nothing in those can actually...
No, that's just caffeine.
It is, okay.
Right. I mean, there are the alcohol energy drinks out there. What is it, Four Loko or something? So it's an energy drink, and then there's alcohol in it. Obviously, that's a no-no on your lunch break, right? Okay. But those are very dangerous because now you're mixing alcohol and a stimulant, and then people are now like a wide-awake drunk, which is why there were so many deaths. I think a couple of years ago there were like 5 deaths in a week on a college campus because you just get wide awake and you keep drinking and drinking. And your body would generally say, I've had enough, and you'd pass out. But in that case, they threw that stimulant in, and they could just keep going, and it killed them. So don't mix stimulants and depressants. Prescription drug abuse. So, right now, because of the heroin epidemic or the opiate epidemic, I think when we talk about prescription drugs, we immediately go to pain meds. But really, there's all sorts of medications out there that people abuse. So we need to be aware of that. And prescription pain medication, if you're not using it the way your physician prescribes, then you're abusing it. If you're letting someone have some of your prescription pain medication, you are then committing a crime. You can't do that. It is most common in young people, so us old people should be okay. How many young people are out there? Okay. And it is the drug most often abused would be painkillers, sedatives, anti-anxiety meds, and stimulants. Narcotic drugs, these are the opiates. There's natural opiates, there's semi-synthetic, which our emergency personnel here have seen time and time again. And if you decide to abuse fentanyl, carfentanil, something like that, it will likely kill you. At some point, it will catch up to you. Opioids are used for pain. I think everyone knows this. And it produces dependency quickly. They are central nervous system depressants. So if you use pain meds and then you decide you're going to wash it down with a couple of beers, very unsafe. And again, it can be smoked, snorted, skin popping, intravenous. The subcutaneous has, that's really gross, just saying. And signs and symptoms, shortness of breath. What was that?
What is skin popping?
So sometimes if they can't find a vein after a while, if you use too long, they'll have like a cut and they'll pull the scab back. And yeah, it's really gross.
Oh, okay. I wish I had asked.
I think I just... Okay, so signs and symptoms, shortness of breath, dry mouth, constricted pupils, sudden changes in behavior or action, disorientation, cycles of hyperalertness followed by suddenly nodding off. That's a very common one. Droopy appearance. Again, constipation. Whew, sign me up. No. But these are things that come along with it, and that, you know, depression, low blood pressure, decreased breathing rate, confusion, sweating, poor coordination. But when you have all of this, so you think about all the signs and symptoms, when, you know, these don't look good, right? It's not like it's keeping you awake, and, you know, but that should just go to show just how addictive these medications are, because even though it's causing constipation and decreased breathing and all of these things, like, hey, most people would be like, that's a problem, right? But someone who's addicted to pain meds, whether it be heroin or whatever, any opiate, when they get to that point, they don't care. They just don't care about the consequences. So, all right, now that we went through a lot of the drugs, I have a quiz for you all. Again, person who yells it out first gets more candy. I'm just going to have you guys all sugared up. So these are your choices, okay? All right, so I'm going to read a statement, and then when I'm finished, whoever yells it out first gets it. Okay. I am an opiate drug and produce a short-term feeling of euphoria, well-being, and pain relief. Who yelled heroin first? Oh, you so shouldn't get that. Since... All right. Here, I'll take... That's true. He didn't follow directions. Oh. Yeah, all right. Okay, so from here on out, you have to follow directions. All right. Individuals who use me more than twice are more than twice as likely to have an anxiety disorder or depression, and are more than 4 times as likely to have symptoms of psychosis. I am associated with schizophrenia. In fact, the Mayo Clinic estimates that 70 to 90% of people with schizophrenia are dependent on me. I didn't. Anybody? Nope. Did you say tobacco? Yeah. Okay, it is tobacco. I am a stimulant and I affect the central nervous system. Repeated use of me can lead to addiction, violent behavior, anxiety, confusion, insomnia, and psychotic behavior. I can be smoked, snorted, orally ingested, and injected. I come in many different forms and may be identified by color. And I come in powder that resembles granulated crystals. I'm giving you another one. Somebody over there said it. Okay. That's a good idea. Somebody gets it. Oh, it's right in the middle. Okay. I have hallucinogenic properties, and I'm often used as a party drug. Users can develop an adverse... Oh, got a lot on that one. Okay, no one's getting it on that one. Yeah, that's right. Based on data collected in 2001, more than 12 million Americans 12 and older use me at least once in a month before a survey. Yep. Just so you know, I am associated with mental health problems. In a long-term study of adolescents using me, it was found that the rate of anxiety disorder and depression in adulthood increased, especially in young women. The more frequent the use, the greater the risk of developing schizophrenia over the following 15 years. What was that? No, that one's marijuana. So that's one thing, like people think, oh, it's okay to use marijuana. But they don't realize that, especially young adults, that it can actually lead to mental health issues. And I am a stimulant, and I come in many forms: powder, tablets, capsules, crystals, or liquid. And I am known as, it is amphetamines. Who is the number one users of amphetamines right now? Well, illegal users. Yeah. Middle-aged women, because they want to be skinny. What? Yeah, I know. I'm going to ruin that. Okay. Okay, so how is this affecting family and coworkers? Enabling, it's when the action that someone takes to protect the person with the problem, so it could be a family member, it could be a coworker. Unfortunately, enabling actually helps the person not deal with their problem, so you do not want to be an enabler. Examples of enabling: covering up, rationalizing, withdrawing, avoiding, blaming, controlling, threatening. So if you're the person who's calling in sick for the spouse, are you enabling? Yes. If you're doing work that your coworker should have been doing but they were too hungover to do, are you enabling? Yes. So those are just examples. Examples of traps family members and coworkers fall into: the whole sympathy, like, oh, you feel really bad for them. You may make excuses for the individual. You may apologize for their behavior. You may try to divert attention from them so that people don't notice. You may say, hey, really, they're innocent. They didn't really do anything wrong. Again, making excuses. You could get really mad, which I would be. Then there's the pity. So the individual using may try to use that tactic, like, feel bad for me, my life is terrible, or the tears. So you may fall into these traps. What do we do about it? Things to remember. Difficulty performing on the job sometimes can be caused by unrecognized personal problems. So this goes back to what I said earlier. Just because you see signs and symptoms of drug use doesn't mean they're actually using drugs or alcohol. It could be that they are, but it could be that they're having family issues. If a supervisor suspects that an employee's performance is poor because of underlying personal problems, it's up to the employee to decide whether or not they want to go to the supervisor, if they want to seek help. But if that supervisor suspects that there's a drug or alcohol problem, then that supervisor has a duty to take action, which we will get into more tomorrow. It's up to the employee to decide whether or not they want help. Addiction is treatable. There are programs out there You can get help through the city's insurance, and then we also use an EAP. It's no longer a concern, it's just TriHealth, I believe. So that is available. I think we get up to 10 visits a year for free. An employee's decision to seek help is private, and it's not one that should be made public. Talked about the EAP. Our conversations are confidential, so they're not going to report it back. And you can use it, so for the EAP, if it ends up that maybe you don't need it, but a family member does, they can still use your visits. Community hotlines, so help that is available. So there's community hotlines, self-help groups, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, community mental health centers, private therapists, and addiction treatment centers. And if anybody needs any of those resources, we actually have a list. Obviously, you don't need to raise your hand now, but afterwards, if you need the list, or you can send me an email and I can forward that to you. It's a really nice list that one of our clerks put together, and it's just a huge, it's just got a ton of resources on it. Confidentiality, again, if you go to EAP or if you talk to a supervisor, your problems will not be made public. All information related to performance will be maintained in your personnel file, but they're not going to be maintaining information about what's being said at the EAP. Information about treatment for addiction or mental illness is not a matter of public record, and it cannot be shared without a signed release. Okay, so that's not going to be made public once again. And if an employee tells a supervisor something in confidence, it is expected and that supervisor is obligated to protect that disclosure. Okay. So again, this is just a way that if you have a problem, we want you to feel comfortable coming forward and telling a supervisor so that you can get the help that you need, rather than testing positive and then losing your job. We would much rather, I know the city would much rather keep you on as an employee and get you help that you need, rather than terminating you. Kind of already covered this. EAP professionals are bound by a code of ethics. Again, that confidentiality. They can't go around telling your business. And you'd have to sign a release if you want them to share information. However, they would have to disclose child abuse, elder abuse, serious threats of homicide or suicide. So if you make statements like that during a session, it's going to be reported. And that's it. Okay, so the cost of 10 visits are covered by the city. This is for our EAP. Employees dealing with the EAP will be kept confidential. And the goal of the program is to assist employees and their eligible dependents through a time of crisis, grief, stress, mental health, substance abuse care, or other life changes that we all experience. Point being, the city has a drug-free workplace policy because they want employees and the public to be safe, but they also want people to come forward if they need help. The goal of the city is to maintain healthy, productive employees. That's why we have this training. So we are now finished. Do you guys have any questions? Yes?
I've read this happen somewhere. It's probably happened a lot. It's probably more towards the police side than the fire side. But so you arrest somebody and they work at some fast food restaurant. And you go in there and they lace your food with something, like pot or something, and you end up testing positive on a drug test. And you have no idea. I mean, how do you defend against that?
That's a good question. Like, if you were...
And I've heard of, people spitting in food and stuff like that.
But you're saying if they were to lace it? Well, I would say that if this were to happen, which I doubt that it happens very often, but if it were to happen, and you ate something and then you started feeling funny, I would be reporting it.
But it doesn't even... You could write it off as food poisoning or bad food, but that stuff stays. Some of that stuff stays in your system for weeks at a time. And if somebody wanted to get back at you,
but if there was enough THC in the food to cause you to have a positive test, you would know that you
Really, does it take that much? I don't think it does.
I don't,
I've heard of people being failed eating a poppy seed bagel.
that's not true. Okay, so I used to work in drug treatment, and I can tell you, I've heard a lot of excuses, and a poppy seed bagel is not going to cause you to fail a drug test. I've heard the excuse many times, like I ate poppy seeds.
That was years.
But I did hear a lot of good excuses, just like, you know, if you were around marijuana smoke, all of a sudden you're going to test positive. That's not the case, not unless they were like hot boxing and you were in the car. And
So it takes a pretty substantial amount.
yeah,
And you would feel the effects if you realize that's what it was.
right. So you should be okay. All right, any other questions? All right, you are free to go. Run like the wind.